if you are a synthesist, there's a tremendous opportunity for you in the next 10 to 20 years in this industry. I'm not saying that. The retail executives that I talk to and spend over 25 hours are saying that. eBay and Amazon are not happening to retail real estate. The future is happening to retail real estate. We need innovation now more so than we've ever needed innovation. We need folks who are synergistic. We need synthesizers out there to see and look at things differently than we've customarily looked at things. I do investment sales. I've been doing it for 8 years or so. And we have an internship program that rolls through my investment sales team. We've had 90 plus interns over the course of a couple of years. And every fall, I poll my interns with the same question. How many of you are going to go to a bricks and mortar location to buy something for Christmas? And about 3 years ago, they quit saying no and gave me a funny look. Like as if the question itself begged for a funny look. And so the cognitive dissonance that I experienced between watching my father build shopping centers for interns that I now have that do not go to them was something that I wanted to explore. So when I was tasked to give an hour-long presentation at Publix headquarters, I thought I could do a couple of different things. I could do the capital markets presentation. Death by cap rates, interest rates, rental rates. What am I going to teach Daron Valero about what he doesn't already know in Miami? How am I going to teach Steve Brandon how to build a shopping center? That wasn't what I wanted to do. My inner psychologist said this. We knew who was coming to the event, and so we decided to call these individuals who were coming. We scheduled phone calls with each one of them. The call averaged about 20 to 25 minutes, and we asked 5 basic questions along with some quick hitters. Here were these 5 questions. What is no one talking about in the industry that they should be talking about? What should we have learned from the downturn, coming out of the downturn, that we did not learn? What do you see that's innovative in retail real estate? Fascinating answer to that question. What do you see that's innovative in retail real estate? And finally, what makes you nervous about the future? Here are the answers to all 68 C-suite level retail executives who own shopping centers along the southeast United States. All of these right here. So we compiled that list and we came up with a title. And it's titled, What Got Us Here Won't Get Us There. Searching for answers to questions that no one is asking. If that title looks familiar to you, there's a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I just lifted the title straight from the book. You all should all get the book. It's a phenomenal book, and I was reading it at the time that I gave this presentation. So here's what I found out. On a broad brush stroke, there is so much pressure in our industry amongst C-suite executives. The pressure not to make a mistake is off the charts. It's completely off the charts. Rarely do we celebrate the deal that we did not close, right? Rarely does your acquisition guy come back and go, I didn't buy the deal. And sometimes not buying a deal can be more profitable than actually buying a deal, right? There's a tremendous amount of pressure among retail executives in the industry. Second thing, what that leads to is a herd mentality. If someone's buying Main and Main at a 4.25 cap, everyone goes and buys Main and Main at a 4.25 cap. Why do they do that? Because everyone else did, and that's what we're all supposed to do. Lending started back up. Why is someone lending? Because someone else lended. And this is not what I'm telling you. This is what these guys, these men and women told me over 68 conversations. About 24 total hours of dialogue. So that's where we got. So if you look at the trends in the retail world right now, it's being governed by folks who, quite frankly, are scared to make mistakes. And that's what they told me. So let me start by saying this. I'm going to use kind of a thread, a guy named John Boyd. Has anyone here heard of a guy named John Boyd? A Navy pilot. Anyone? John Boyd was one of the most prolific Navy pilots in Vietnam. He was the number one Navy pilot in Vietnam, had more kills than anyone else. They called him 42nd Boyd. The movie Top Gun, the school Top Gun, he invented the school Top Gun. He was a flight instructor and then went to the Pentagon after he retired. He could go head-to-head in simulations with Americans and down any other American in a dogfight in a simulation in 40 seconds or less. Had never been done to that point, has never been done since. He was considered a military genius and, quite frankly, probably second to Sun Tzu in terms of military strategy. In 1976, he wrote a paper. It's called Destruction and Creation Theory. And it was a thought experiment. It was his seminal work. And I'm going to use this as an analogy to kind of weave our way through the next couple of minutes to describe to you what these retailer executives told me. Here's the analogy. It's a thought experiment. He gave you 4 different domains. And he said, I'm going to give you a context, and I'm going to give you contextual clues, and I want you to analyze a domain. Analyze a domain. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you have a skier. I've given you a context, and I've given you skis, I've given you a gondola, a snowy mountain. And what do you visualize when you see those things? You see a skier. Second thing, I've given you a speedboat. So I've given you context, I've given you different items to analyze. Outboard motor, water, you see a boat. Lower left-hand side, I've given you a context, bicycle. What do you envision? A bicycle. Finally, a tank at the lower right-hand corner. You got the tracks, the turret, the gun, the army men. What do you visualize when you see that? You see a tank. So if you analyze the individual parts, and I give you a context behind each one of them, you can visualize the individual parts. Now, this is what Boyd said. This is what he said. He said, I'll give you the same experiment, except in this time, I'm going to eliminate the context, I'm going to eliminate the titles, and then I'm going to mix everything up into what he called a sea of anarchy. And he challenged you to come up with a 5th domain, a domain that had not been created yet, a domain that you couldn't use analytical skills, but you had to synthesize the different parts of the elements to come up with a new domain. Now, you don't have to use all the parts. You just use some of them. So you strip some away, and he would challenge you, what do you see there? You see tank tracks, you see skis, you see handlebars. What do you see? Snowmobile, right? The duck-billed platypus of transportation. This is what Boyd said. There's 2 types of people in the world, as he would say it. There's analysts and there's synthesists. An analyst is paid to know more and more about less and less. And more about less and less. And more about less and less. So they know everything there is to know about nothing at all. A synthesist has to take different ideas, abstract ideas that don't necessarily fit together, piecemeal them together and come up with a new and 5th domain. What do we tell our colleges and universities to prepare our young people to be? The entry-level job in retail real estate is what? It's an analyst. Everyone starts as an analyst. I started as an analyst. And all of a sudden, over years and years and years of people being analysts and moving up in the career, then all of a sudden, you have an industry full of analysts. If you're a synthesist in this room, if you're a young person, old person, age is completely irrelevant. If you are a synthesist, there's a tremendous opportunity for you in the next 10 to 20 years in this industry. I'm not saying that. The retail executives that I talk to and spend over 25 hours are saying that. So, with that being said, I'm going to use the trends here that we're seeing here. Demographics, technology. Go back to the next slide if you would. Demographics, technology, delivery, and transportation, and building envelope. If you analyze just demographics, right? Demographics are changing in this country and in the industrialized world more so than they've ever changed in human history, and certainly in American history. But if you analyze just demographics, the retail world will leave you in the dust. If you analyze, go back if you would. If you go back and you just analyze technology is changing radically. I don't have to say that. We all know that, correct? It's changing faster than it's ever changed before. Study Moore's Law. It changes dramatically. Delivery and transportation. You want to know what's innovative? Delivery and transportation. People right now are trying to solve how to get either a consumer to a product or a product to a consumer faster and faster and faster. And finally, the building envelope. The building envelope has to change. So if you analyze just one part of these 4 things, you will indeed be an analyst. And you'll know more and more about less and less. But the retail world requires synergy. And you have to look at all of these parts. So With that said, let's jump into demographics. When I was talking to these retail executives, I asked those 4 questions we just went over, and I gave them a couple of quick hitters. I said, look, if I said X, what's the first thing that comes to mind? I had one guy say, what is this, a personality test? But I said demographics. So this is the first thing that came to mind, by and large, amongst our retail executives. Changing. Most common theme. 68 polled, almost everyone, well, about 40% said changing as their first initial answer. Almost everyone said changing in the first couple of sentences. The second item that was clearly and apparent is that demographics are important. So they know 2 things, to state the obvious. Demographics are changing, and they're important. Right? One guy said demographics is destiny. You buy a shopping center in bad demographics, it's an uphill battle. You buy a shopping center with rising demographics, you're going to see rising rental rates. Parenthetically, about 35% of all respondents said this in their first 3 answers, and about 50% after given the initial term demographics, what do you think of, said this in the entirety of their answer, is the difference between the haves and the have-nots in our society. Now, parenthetically, let me just touch on that and we'll jump right back into this. There's 319 million people in this country. 101 million people are on one of the 15 government-subsidized food programs, whether it be local, state, or federal. 101 million Americans are on one of the 15 government-subsidized food. A third of our people cannot feed themselves 3 meals a day. We spend $115 billion as a country feeding folks. There's 49 million Americans on the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's food stamps. That's the new name for food stamps. Now, harken back with me if you would. If you watch the History Channel, you see 3 basic things on all these images in the History Channel during the Great Depression. You see images of the guys looking at the ticker tape, and they're all downtrodden because the market's tanking, right? You see the images of J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller in their top hats and their black coats. The other image you almost always see in the History Channel about the Great Depression is you see soup lines, right? You see men, women, and children in soup lines. We have 49 million Americans in soup lines. What would that do to the retail industry if they put 49 million Americans on TV in soup lines every night? You're seeing this in shopping centers. Shopping centers have to placate, have to cater to the haves and the have-nots. Our retail executives are very keen on that, but that's simply parenthetical. So let's dive right back into changing and importance. How many of you ever heard of Joseph Coughlin? If you do not know who Joseph Coughlin is, YouTube him on your way back. He's a professor at MIT. He runs the aging lab at MIT. Phenomenal, very interesting guy. This is what he's telling us about aging in this country. Every 7 seconds, a baby boomer turns 66 in this country, the most disruptive generation in American history, right? Not going quietly into that good night. Every 7 seconds, a baby boomer turns 66 in this country. The fastest growing demographic in the industrialized world is people 85 years and up. We are living longer, not just in the United States, but all over the world. We're living longer. They issued a workforce warning. Goldman Sachs issued a workforce warning in China because their population is getting older and older and older. They're not backfilling it. They're going to have a workforce warning in 2050 in China. For the first time in American history and in world history, people who are 65 and up is growing at a faster rate than those 5 and younger. That's what Joseph Coughlin tells us. So how does that affect your shopping center? Who is getting out of the car to come to your shopping center? The average age of someone patronizing a shopping center is going up. Are your tents matching that age group? In 1900, average life expectancy in the United States, just think about what you think it is. 50? Anyone else want to throw a guess out? No one? 43. 1900, average life expectancy 43. Life expectancy right now, the actuaries are a little behind, 86. In a little over 100 years, we have doubled the life expectancy in the United States because of clean water, cleaner cities, obviously medication, medical. So think about what this means as it relates to your shopping center in terms of people patronizing your shopping center and getting older. You think that medical is going to make its way into the shopping center business over the next 10 to 20 years? You think that boomers want to continue to go to hospitals? Here's the secret about boomers, and we got some boomers in the room. Boomers are not old. That is over. You ask if someone who's 68 what old is, they'll tell you 85. You ask an 85-year-old what old is, they'll tell you 100. Little statistic for you. Number one city in the country that has more centurions with driver's licenses. Destin, Florida. There's 14 people in Destin who are over 100 years old with driver's licenses. That statistic's a little old. It can change at any time. But that's happening right now. That's happening right now. So we are living longer. And we're living a higher quality of life. Boomers are demanding a higher quality of life. My brother-in-law works for Apple Computer. You know the number one demographic of people who buy iPads? Ages 55 and up. For years and years and years, we have taught in business schools that early adapters are the people you need to cater to if you want to sell goods. Get them while they're young. Get them hooked on the iPad, on whatever it is. Not anymore. Early adapters are now 55 and up. So gone are the days of the customary sales pitch of getting them while they're young. But guess what? That is half the equation. That's half the tsunami that's sprinting towards our shopping centers for the next 10 to 20 years. The other half is millennials. Millennials. Think about this. From cradle to grave, this is the first generation that's had mobile technology. It's been their primary source of communication. It's been a secondary to primary source of purchasing. And they're now entering the workforce. Let's talk about millennials. About twice the size of California. This is the most educated group of women that America has ever produced. Latinos are the largest minority amongst millennials. They do not value education as customarily most Americans did. Why do they not value education? Because they have a doctorate degree right here. That's their doctorate degree. You don't know the answer, I can find it in 15 seconds or less. Right? They don't value education like we once did. They're also graduating from college with $1 trillion of debt. So what does that mean for society? Well, what are the two things that get us out of a recession customarily? Housing and cars. They're graduating college with a housing payment and college tuition debt. And guess what? They've always had this. This costs you between $1,200 and $1,500 a year, right? So they're graduating with a housing payment of college debt and a car payment and a mobile phone. There's only so much to spend when you've got those two things weighing you down, which we did not have 10, 15 years ago to the degree we now have. Millennials value access over ownership any day of the week. Any day of the week. So when we look at millennials, we look at essentially a population that does not trust advertising. Peer-to-peer marketing is what they appreciate. Hello, has anyone seen the Ice Bucket Challenge? Did that have any advertising behind it? Not at all. And who's driving the bus on the Ice Bucket Challenge? Right? When I polled our executives, very few knew what Yelp was. If I ask any intern that I've ever had, they will know what Yelp is. They're on it almost all the time. And I venture to say, I don't know how many people here know what Yelp is or how often they use it, but Yelp is a peer-to-peer monitoring system. You go to a restaurant, it has a Yelp, it's a review system. Right? Anytime we want to go to lunch or someplace, almost always someone in my office says, hey, let's check the Yelp. Let's decide if we want to go there. If you as an owner, if you as a franchisor are not checking Yelp on your tenants and they ask you for rental reduction, sorry tenants if you're in the room, you need to check their Yelp account. If you're a franchisor on your franchisees, you need to check their Yelp account. There's technologies that millennials are using that we can also adapt to our own lifestyle to improve the quality of our grading in our tenants and our shopping centers. Esurance. Esurance, another phenomenal ad. If you want to learn about marketing, look no further than Esurance. Anyone watch the Super Bowl? The last ad in the Super Bowl was an Esurance ad. A guy from The Office, which is a satire reality show. I forget his name. It's John somebody. I can't say his last name. I'm sure someone here is saying, I know his last name. The guy can't say it. But anyway, he's sitting at a table with $1.5 million, and he asked everyone watching, hey, we saved $1.5 million by buying the last ad in the Super Bowl. And if you tweet about it, we'll give you $1.5 million. We'll pick someone out there to give $1.5 million. So you think that was a successful ad? They had more tweets than the Seattle Seahawks. The winning team of the Super Bowl. They had more tweets than the Seattle Seahawks. They had more impressions, close to 1 billion impressions. When an impression is any type of news media release, it was all over the world, the success of this advertising campaign. It shut their website down. Completely shut their website down. So, you have millennials who've grown up on reality television. They don't like advertising. What does that mean for your tenants? Your tenants need to be marketing in a peer-to-peer format. If they're not doing it, they will be left behind. So you have these two gigantic demographic groups heading to the same conclusion, using technology for different ways. What got us here? The question is, how do we live longer? Guess what? We've answered that question. Living 100 years of age, that's 30 extra years of golf for some of you people, right? The question now becomes, how are we going to live better? Now think about in the context of your shopping center. Does your shopping center answer that question? You as a tenant, do you answer that question? Is there a synergy around your shopping center to answer that question? And not only that, do you answer that question for the higher end demographic, the lower end demographic? Are you answering that question? The takeaway question from this is simply this. How do we re-engineer shopping centers for an aging population and the most unimpressed population in human history, the millennials, right? They've seen it all. Give it to me now. I need it now. I've seen it all. Impress me. I'll come to your shopping center if you impress me. So, that covers demographics. There's 3 other things. If you alone study demographics, and that's all you study, you will be an analyst. That's a quarter of the story. So let's look at technology. Technology. I said technology, and this is what 68 retail executives responded with. Exploding, increasing, improving, changing quickly, changing everything. Change, game changer. Second major tranche was this. Better embrace it. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay, of vital importance. Now, this is kind of interesting. The third kind of tranche was this. 1 in 5 retail executives said the following. "20% admitted saying, I have no idea how to use technology." 20%. What does that mean for the shopping center industry? We need to incorporate technology like never before. If I went to a thriving industry and said, do you know how to use technology? Would 20% of the people there say they have no clue? If you don't understand technology, you need to get on board quickly because the train is leaving the station. If you're not here on technology by now, the train's probably already left the station. So let's dive into technology. eBay sales, Overstock's question, Amazon's goal. Every 7 seconds in this country, there's a flat screen TV that's sold. Every 18 seconds in this country, a pair of sunglasses is sold. Every 76 seconds in this country, an automobile is sold. Does those statistics surprise you? They shouldn't. But they're sold by one company, eBay. eBay's goal in 2014 is to sell a car every minute, every hour, every day, every year. eBay sells more flat screen TVs than anyone else. They sell more sunglasses than anyone else. And guess what? They sell more cars than anyone else. This company didn't exist 12 years ago. I mean, it existed 12 years ago, but didn't really hit its stride till about 12 years ago. It's a precarious position to be on top of an industry. Say, for example, cars. You're looking for your competitors, right? But what if your competitor is not even in your industry yet? You have to be a synthesist at all times if you're at the top of the industry. Because sometimes the competitor enters the industry like a freight train and there's no time to react. Not to be outdone. eBay sales were $14 billion last year. Amazon in 2009, $24 billion. Millennials forming household formations. In 2013, Amazon sales, $74 billion. They'll hit $1 trillion this year in sales. Why? Millennials. Again, they're forming household formations. You see how these things all tie together. So we've got Overstock's question. This is a true story that I heard on the phone with a retail executive. He's at home on a Saturday, and he gets a phone call on his cell phone. The person on the other end of the phone says, "Hello, my name is so-and-so. I'm with Overstock.com. I'm in charge of selling paper plates, paper cups, and plastic forks nationwide. How would you like that job?" Right? It's a cold call on his cell phone. This is what the guy says. "I notice," which is kind of spooky, but "I notice you spend about $200 to $300 a month in paper plates and paper cups." Fact, it was true. What if I showed you, classic sales line, what if I showed you how you could save $200 to $400 a year in paper plate, paper cup, plastic forks purchases using Overstock.com? That's what a retail executive is telling me this story. What do you think he said? He said, "You don't understand who you've called here. I'm a retail executive. I don't buy things online," right? Do you think that's what he said? Absolutely not. He said, "Tell me more." Guess what? He gets all his paper plates, forks, and knives from Overstock.com, and he saves about $500 a year. Think about that. Overstock.com not only knew his number, they knew his cell phone number. Not only did they know his purchase pattern, they knew exactly what he was buying. And guess what? I would venture to say they knew when he was not purchasing, so they called him in a period in his credit card history where there was no activity, the highest probability in which he would answer the phone. Think they have smart channels and technology with Overstock.com? Absolutely. Amazon's goal. Amazon's goal, and this is not some back office, quiet goal. Amazon's goal is to sell everything to everyone. That's crazy. Sell everything to everyone. That's a canoe to a kid, a car to an adult, a ruler, a rubber band, a pair of socks. Sell everything to everyone. I thought to myself, that is absolutely nuts. And then I thought, I was talking to one of my interns one day. You know what crazy is? I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I've not purchased music in 3 years. I've not listened to the radio in 2 years. I listen to any song I want to for free, anytime I want to on this device. Free. That's crazy. If I would have said that in Nashville, Tennessee 10 years ago, they would have run me out of the town. Out of the town. You know what's crazy? My niece was taken to the library over Christmas. You know what her only comment was about the library? There's a lot of books in there. Why do they have so many books? A lot of old people reading books. Again, I told you her husband, or rather her father, works for Apple Computer. She was opening apps at the age of 2 years old. I was probably eating dirt when I was 2 years old. Right? I was in a dentist office last month. I was sitting next to a guy who had a 2-year-old with him. The 2-year-old was acting up. So the guy picked up a magazine off the counter, or off the table like all dentist offices have. He handed it to the 2-year-old, and guess what the 2-year-old did? You're never going to believe this. Picked the magazine up and went like this. Realized it was not turning pages and began to cry and handed the magazine back to her father. That is crazy. Crazy is the Arizona Cardinals football stadium is named what? The University of Phoenix football stadium. A college that will not produce one professional football player has the naming rights to a professional football team. That is crazy. Can you imagine the Chicago Bears playing at Notre Dame Stadium? Not happening. That is crazy. You see all these events occur, and you begin to see a seismic shift in what's going on. We basically summarize it as this. There's a friction experience equation that's going on with technology. And I'll sum it up for you like this. Every time you want to consume, your brain plays a game. How much friction is this going to cost me? How much trouble is it going to cost me to consume? And what experience am I going to get out of this? Right? You play that game every time you want to do something. The friction involved with the consuming and the experience or the pleasure out of the consumption. A light bulb goes out. I had a retail executive tell me this. He was out of town all week. He was home on a Saturday. His wife, he has 2 kids. He's gone all week, and then he walks into his garage, and the light bulb in his garage goes out. Here's what goes on in his brain. I need to go get my light bulb changed. I need to go to Home Depot. I need to drive to Home Depot. I need to get in my car and drive to Home Depot. Friction, 30 minutes. Okay. I need to park. I need to walk into an 80,000 square foot box, find a little tiny light bulb. Friction, that's going to take me time. Traffic's going to be worse. Friction. Get back in my car, drive back home. Friction. Get home. My wife was expecting me to be here all day. Friction. I've got 2 kids who are now rambunctious because they haven't seen their dad now, not just for 5 days, but now for 6 days. Friction, friction, friction. But my light bulb will be in my garage. Experience. Right? So the friction equation, the friction experience equation played out in his brain. This is the decision he made. I'll just go to my mobile device. I'll buy a light bulb off Amazon.com. It'll be here in 2 days. I can deal with the friction of having a dark garage. There's no experience involved. Boom, done. Purchase, consumption, in a matter of seconds. Friction experience equation. Right? Ben Beach buys a shirt. Ben was an intern of mine. He works at a bank in Jacksonville now. He's an intern of mine in the fall. Like most college kids, he had no idea how to dress. I said, Ben, just get a white shirt, wear a blue tie, get non-iron. Let's just not make this complicated, right? You come to work, look good, you'll be good for interviews. Wear a white. This is not complicated. Go to Joseph Bank, get the buy one, get $1 million free sale, and they'll take care of you. So Ben has 2 internships. He's in a fraternity. It's the fall. He's graduating, so he's got to get a job too. So that's like his other class. And he's taking a full breadth of classes at UCF. But he takes my advice. He goes home to his fraternity house, gets in the car, friction, drives to Joseph Bank, friction, 35 minutes to the Waterford Lakes Joseph Bank south of UCF, walks into Joseph Bank, has no idea what to do, has no idea what his size is, none of that stuff. He meets the sales associate there. Sales associate gets him set up with a couple of shirts. I mean, after all, wide fit, narrow fit, cuffs, no cuffs, spread collar, narrow collar, monogram, no monogram. All these complicated decisions about men we go through with shirts, right? We got it so tough. Just kidding. And Ben purchases a shirt. He leaves there, friction, drives 35 minutes back. Now his entire evening is gone. My question to you is this. What did Ben Beach buy? Did he buy a shirt? If you think he bought a shirt, he didn't buy a shirt. Did he buy expertise about a shirt? Didn't buy that either. You can go on YouTube and there's countless people who will tell you what's cool and what's fashionable and what kind of shirt you should buy. He bought customized expertise. Because YouTube can't tell you what your sizes are. So that's what he bought when he went to Joseph Bank. The question that I have, the question we all have, the question that retailer has, the question that landlord has, is will Ben go back after he's bought his customized expertise? The answer is no. Ben got what he paid for. So the question now is, when he buys online, will that shopping center get the credit for those sales? Will that tenant get the credit for that sales? And the answer is no. They will not. The friction experience equation is real. eBay and Amazon are not happening to retail real estate. The future is happening to retail real estate. The future is happening. Is your shopping center ready for the future? Is it ready? Let's talk about this. Technology in the future. We talked about some of the various things we can use to our advantage. Omni-channel marketing, crowdsourcing. I talked to one retail exec and he was talking about in South Florida they had a shopping center that the last 2 or 3 bays are always difficult to fill. And their shopping center had a Facebook page with 3,000 likes on it. And so they polled a question to all the people that were friends or likes or whatever it is on Facebook and said, who's the best pizza flipper in this immediate area? They got this response. This one guy was great at flipping pizzas. And guess what? They locked him in. They surrounded him with a team, a staff. They incubated him. And now he is in that shopping center flipping pizzas. And it's a successful tenancy in that shopping center. They crowdsourced a tenant for their shopping center. Does your shopping center, does your tenant have a social media strategy? Is there a strategy for your tenant in terms of social media? Are you active on Yelp? Are you following your Yelp accounts? Are you making a requirement? Some people are even talking about making a requirement in their leases that Yelp accounts be turned in. Instead of taking sales, If you can't negotiate sales or whatever side of the aisle you're on, talk about Yelp accounts in that capacity. Very interesting question. So, what got us here? What got us here is minimizing friction. Good ingress, good egress on the going home side of work, subject to what kind of tenant you are. Maybe you're on the going to work side of the road. If you're in a minimizing friction game, you will lose. You're not set up for that. Not to the degree that technology allows other formats to be set up for that. Maximizing experience, and it may sound cliche, you're going to hear this over and over and over again. What kind of experience do I have when I go to your shopping center? What kind of experience do I have when I walk into your tenant space? What does that feel like? Let's move back to our quadrants here. Oh, technology. Here we go. Takeaway question. What will it mean for shopping centers when $100,000 demos spend 50% of their disposable income online? We talk about demographics being so important. Show me the $100,000 demos. Show me $100,000 demos. Show me 3-mile rings of $100,000 demos. I had this comment from a guy who said, I really think we underestimate the purchasing power of millennials. I thought it was an interesting comment. And my response to that was, you could be correct. In fact, you probably are. We probably underestimate that. But what I'm curious is the purchasing pattern of millennials. I don't necessarily care whether they consume or not. I want to see them consume in a retail center, right? You have to maximize experience in all facets of your retail center. So let's move on. So we talked about demographics. We talked about technology. Let's talk about delivery and transportation. So I asked the question, what do you see that's innovative in retail real estate right now? What do you see that's innovative? What do you see that's innovative in retail real estate? Some of the answers. I've been mowing what used to be a highly dynamic industry. Not one thing. No one's doing anything different. If you're putting a paint job on your 2005 strategy, you're not going to do so hot over the next 10 to 20 years. It's a totally new ball game. Putting a paint job on the 2005 strategy is not what you want to do. So we talk about innovation right now. The statistic was 30% said nothing was innovative, and then 30% said technology. If I went to, again, same question as I asked you before, if I went to an industry and says, what do you think is innovative right now? And 30% of the people said nothing, would that be a growing industry? If I went to Silicon Valley and said, what do you think is innovative right now? Would 30% say nothing? Furthermore, would 30% say retail real estate? Now that's innovative. We need innovation now more so than we've ever needed innovation. We need folks who are synergistic. We need synthesizers out there to see and look at things differently than we've customarily looked at things. We have to have that. So when I think about innovation, this is what I think about. I was selling a shopping center in Orlando. It was I would quantify it as a B-class shopping center at a second-generation anchor space. The anchor space had been bifurcated, so there was 2 anchors in there. There were 8 shopping center bays in the shopping center, 3 of which were occupied by the usual suspects, as you can probably imagine: an ethnic restaurant, a nail salon, and a hair salon. So 5 bays vacant, right? Now, this is the interesting thing for me. I always love these assignments. I like to look at traffic patterns. And contiguous to this particular shopping center was an elementary school. When we did the research on the elementary school, about 600 kids went to this elementary school. It is contiguous parcel. Contiguous parcel. So trying to be a good investment sales broker, I went over there around 2:15, 2:30, pulled in the parking lot because I want to see the traffic patterns. I've got vacancy here, and I've got another anchor tenant in an elementary school. 9 months a year, right? So around 2:45, about 65 cars were in my parking lot, in my owner's parking lot, contiguous to the elementary school. 65 cars. There's a quick serve restaurant, corporately owned in the out parcel, and that was it. So they're all parking in my parking lot. And I turn around, I'm looking at these 65 cars right in front of me, and I turn around, I'm looking at 4 vacant bays right here. This is what happens. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a truck drive up. Not just any truck, it was a food truck. It was red. This is not your father's ice cream truck. This was a souped up food truck that served ice cream. He parks right in the middle of 65 cars. 3 o'clock, the bell rings. I watch 70 kids not walk, not run, sprint to that truck right then and there. And I literally went like this. For 15 minutes, I just went like this. This is unbelievable. And when I went back to the office, I called my owner. I said, you need to do two things. You need to do two things quickly. One is get the leasing agent out here and get an ice cream guy as quickly as possible tomorrow. They need to be here at 2:30. And you need to be standing right here, and they need to watch this happen. And this needs to happen over and over again until you get that guy to sign a lease. We need an ice cream store in here yesterday. Once that lease is signed, get the property manager and get that ice cream truck out of here. Right? You know what the landlord told me? Just sell the shopping center. Don't complicate things. Upside for the new buyer. All right, I'll be happy to do that too. But this was innovative to me. This was innovative. This is innovation amongst a tenant who said, you know what, I see things a little bit differently. There's some things we could learn from food trucks, believe it or not. So we began to study food trucks in our office, just kind of as a side note. Inuit tells us that in 2012, the total sales in food trucks in the United States was $650 million of food. 2017, $2.17 billion industry will be the food truck industry. Restaurant on Wheels will serve 5% of all food that's bought out of the house by $2.17 billion industry. So when I watched that food truck, we began to study where food trucks are populous. So you look at Washington, D.C., you look at New York. New York has a black market for food truck licenses. There's only 3,000. You can buy a food truck license like you can buy a taxi license. They're about $30,000, and you can lease them out. Never have anything to do with a food truck. But it's a black market in New York. So we said, okay, New York is this good number. So they have 3,000 food trucks in New York. So just for the sake of argument, and I'm not a specialist in New York, some of you may be, but let's just say the average restaurant size in New York is 1,100 square feet. Probably smaller, but let's just say average size is 1,100 square feet. Average rental rate in New York, it oscillates all over the place. You know, it can be as high as anywhere in the country, or, you know, a rate that's commensurate with other towns. Let's say $85 a foot is the average rental rate. Let's say the CAMs all pay out. That's $280 million of NOI on wheels in New York. Let's cap it out at a 6.5 cap. Again, a conservative number. That's $4.3 billion of value in retail real estate on wheels driving around New York. Every time I see a food truck in Orlando, this is what goes through my mind. There goes $30,000 of NOI. Subject to the shopping center, of course. There goes $400,000 of value. In the weekends in Orlando, there's a food truck bazaar almost every weekend where 22 food trucks gather in a parking lot, and guess what they do? They form an $8.8 million shopping center. And then they disperse at the end of the evening. Now think about that. We studied Orlando. We found 2 food trucks that had gone from truck to bricks and mortar. Here's a tenant that already has sales. He's already got a following. Guess what? He knows how to multi-channel market. You have to. You're on wheels. You've got no choice. They're excellent at marketing. The ones that are indeed successful, of course, as you can imagine. How many of those are we putting back into shopping centers? Amazon has a vision for your life. It's you buy something on your mobile device at lunch, and then it's at your doorstep at dinner. That's their stated goal. You see this in the upper left-hand corner? The drone? That's not some crazy drone. This is a guy in Lake Michigan who owned a gasoline place on Lake Michigan, and he would drop beer to... That's a fisherman getting beer from a gasoline store in Lake Michigan. The FAA grounded it because you can't use a drone for commercial use yet. But that's not some corporate... monolithic company doing. That's a mom and pop thinking about how can I be innovative? How can I get goods and services? How can I get goods and services to people if they can't come to me in a convenient fashion? eBay Now, when I gave this talk in February in Lakeland, had in 25 cities had rolled out eBay Now, which means you can order something and have it now, right? Hence eBay Now. You can order it and for $5 you can have it for less. You can have it in less time than an hour. That's eBay Now. That was 25 cities in February. It's in 50 cities right now. Let me read some statistics to you about the arms race. The arms race in the tech world is not about price. The arms race is in speed of delivery. Leah, who works in my office, ordered a jar of honey from Amazon at 10:30 at night. At 10:45, she got a notice that it had shipped. A jar of honey. It was at our office the next day. Amazon has built 2 million square foot warehouses in Florida, Ruskin, and Lakeland. Right now, let's just look at some statistics here. Amazon just broke ground on a million square foot. This was in, obviously, February. That's now done. Founded in 1994, Amazon has invested $13.9 billion in warehouses since 2010. They have built 50 new warehouses. That number is dated again. That's more than the previous 16 years combined. They now have 89 warehouses. Again, that number is 8 months old. By the end of 2013, Amazon could reach 15% of the population with same-day delivery with their fulfillment centers, right down there at the bottom. If their pipeline comes to fruition with the remaining fulfillment centers they're building in 2014, what percentage of the population do you think they'll be able to reach in the United States? Over 50%. Read an article last week. In India, they're already rolling out the drones. Why? Because India has no FAA. There's no rules in India. Let them fly. Now, me being from Tennessee, if a lot of my friends saw a drone flying in Tennessee, that thing would get shot down like no tomorrow. But it's going to be interesting to see how that happens and how that plays out. You want to talk about what's innovative? Delivery is innovative in the tech world. Figuring out how to get you something faster and faster and get through the friction that the tech world experiences through waiting. Right? Low experience, high friction. They're getting eliminated. Their ideal utopian society is you order something, anything, you have it in 30 minutes or less. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? So who are they going after? They're going after millennials and they're going after boomers. So, takeaway question here. What got us here? Cost efficiency, right? How can you create goods and services as cheaply as possible? What's going to get you there is time efficiency. But if you're in the retail real estate industry, you've got to have a place. You've got to create an experience. So, again, going back to our quadrants, a takeaway question. Here it is. What will it mean when the future delivery looks like this? It's a picture in Ohio. They were already running that Domino's Pizza in Ohio, delivery. So we got demographics, we have technology, we have delivery and transportation, and we have the building envelope, the fourth quadrant. Again, you analyze this individual quadrant, or that individual quadrant, you lose the whole message. It's how all of these four things are going to shape the shopping center of tomorrow and the future. Let's talk about the building envelope here. I said cap rates. Here are the answers. Too low, too low, too low, too low. Aggressive, aggressive, getting aggressive. Right? So from an investment sales broker's perspective, it's great. Right? Rental rates. 68 people polled. The most common answer was increasing. Sales are going up. Rental rates will rise at a commensurate level with sales. And this one was a little bit interesting. I said big boxes. What's the first thing you think about? Getting bigger. We had a guy from Pro Lodges who's at the event in February. Who do you think said getting bigger? Pro Lodges, right? Now, if you talk to Steve Weingarten, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, he'll tell you this, that Weingarten's occupancy on big boxes in the state of Florida is 100% right now. Very impressive, and Weingarten's an outstanding company. And I'm not disputing, in terms of big boxes, that right now there's activity in the big box space. There's a guy named Jim Senef who works, or who founded CNL, works at CNL, founded CNL in Orlando, Florida. He has a great talk. If you ever get a chance to hear Jim Senef speak, he uses this kind of analogy of the difference between a weatherman and a climatologist. A weatherman tells you the weather from day to day. Here's the weather today. Here's the weather today. Here's the weather today. A climatologist tells you what makes the weather. Studies trends and forecasts. Right now, the weather is actually pretty healthy for boxes. But if you look at the climate for boxes, they're going one of two directions. They're either getting smaller, the footprint's getting smaller, or they're getting huge and they're swallowing the shop space. They're putting everything inside the big box. I was at my parents' house. They live in Orlando. I was at my parents' house, and we had dinner, and there was a new Publix that had just, well, not a new Publix, but a Publix that just opened up a cooking school. And so they're right next to this cooking school at Publix, so I went over there, and I said, I want to check out this cooking school, see what it looks like, see the format of it. This was a Saturday night, so, I get crazy on Saturday nights, you guys. I get crazy. You want to get crazy? Let's walk shopping centers, right? So I went to the back of this Publix, and they have a cooking school called Aprons. In the back corner, there were 65 people in this cooking school, give or take, on a Saturday night, right? These people would not have been in a Publix on a Saturday night if there was no cooking school there, right? So what did Publix do? They gave them an experience and a reason to be there. Whole Foods down the street. You walk into the Whole Foods down the street. There is a full-fledged bar in the Whole Foods box down the street. You can go get wine, beer, all sorts of things. So, next to the freezer aisle, you've got a bar. And it's generally pretty occupied. When I was walking through there one time, there was a full house there. People were watching the American soccer team play in Whole Foods. Hannaford Brothers had an article a couple months ago about putting a gym in their box. Now, this used to be a cardinal sin in groceries. A gym, people park, they stay, it eats up parking. They're putting a 10,000 square foot gym in their grocery store. So you work out, you have a personal trainer, he can walk you up and down the aisles, tell you what to buy, and you're out of there, right? It's almost like a bad joke, like a cooking school, a gym, and a bar walk into a grocery store, right? I mean, what are we doing? Well, we're providing experience. These are tenants who have excess space, right? That these goods are no longer being sold and creating an experience in their shopping center. These are tenant evolutions. So when you look at kind of the trends, merchandise versus lifestyle, we used to always say, find the right merchants to make a creative synergy in your shopping center. Now it's, what kind of lifestyle does your shopping center provide someone? What kind of lifestyle does the box provide and the tenants provide? What kind of lifestyle do your tenants provide? Interesting question. There's a guy who's done a project in Orlando. It's a pretty fascinating project, and he used the phrase collision zones, and I really liked it a lot. In talking to him, he has a shopping center. It's essentially a shopping center, but it's not a strip. It's a box, and it almost looks like a barn where you have different stalls. And you have this stall here where you can get a nice coffee made. It takes about 5 minutes. The barista makes it, and then next to that stall is a cheese stall. He talks about collision zones and waiting in line. And he says that I've created a scenario where I create collision zones amongst my tenants where a patron can walk in, his intent is to buy coffee, and then he walks out buying cheese, right? Think about the standard format of a shopping center. Flat, with walls going through. He said, that's not what I want. It would cost, my tenants would go out of business if they were separated. He's found a ton of tenants, put together a market-type atmosphere, and created collision zones for the patrons to go into and experience, and it raises sales for everyone. Pretty innovative. Definitely different. Guess what he has to stay attuned to? The demographics in his area. Guess what he's really savvy at? Technology. Guess what he's created on Saturday nights and Sunday nights? He has music there. He's created an experience. He's created a cultural hub for people to meet and join. I believe there's a property manager of the future that's out there. I don't necessarily know what it looks like, but what C-suite executives are telling me is that the standard fare of you've got a property manager and a leasing agent, and then the tenants are left to create an environment on their own is no longer working. You have to have someone, and it looks like a millennial in my mind, who's tech savvy, who has relationships with the tenants, and who can create an experience. The days of setting up your shopping center and hitting start and letting it roll on its own, I think are long gone. Millennials are telling that, and guess what? Boomers are telling us that as well, because they're opting for other opportunities and other choices that are easier, that have less friction involved in them. Property management. Let's go to the next slide. What got us here? Thinking inside the box. What'll get us there? Thinking, of course, outside the box. Now, here's the takeaway question. Why do we build shopping centers with a 30-year life for a consumer whose spending habits change every 3 years? Or who change spending habits every 3 years? Think about that question. Now, 30-year life is obviously an accounting term. A shopping center is a 30, 40, sometimes 50-year life. Consumer spending habits are changing every 3 to 4 years with technology. We have a great history of immigration in this country. The first generation comes to the country, speaks only the native tongue, right? Second generation speaks native tongue and English. What's the third generation speak? English. That's it. Same applies to retail real estate. My parents, our parents as a whole, collectively, some of us, we had to touch it, had to feel it, had to see it, had to try it on. Next generation, either or. I could do both. Maybe I'll buy a shirt, maybe I won't. Touch it, feel it. I could go either way. Third generation, what's the quickest thing that'll get me that shirt? Right? So shopping center envelope has to change. It's so capital intensive to change a shopping center. We need to find the 4 smartest people in this room, 3 smartest people in this room, pay them $1 million for a year, and don't come out of the closet till you come up with an answer to that question. We need to solve for this question. We are putting ourselves somewhat in a prison environment, locking ourselves into a prison environment because it's so capital intensive to change the format. There's a new technology that's coming out in 10 years. I don't know what it is. It'll change everything. Sounds like a crazy statement. If I would have said that a couple years ago, you look at me and laugh. But guess what? It's not so crazy anymore, right? That question right there was the most enlightening question that anyone said when I was on the phone with them. So let's go back to this concluding remarks. We talked about demographics. There's a couple of different variables in demographics. You have to know baby boomers. You have to know millennials. You have to understand them. But if you just understand that one box, you'll be left behind. Technology. High experience. Low friction. You have to understand these variables in order to be successful with your shopping center. You have to begin to incorporate technology with your shopping center. Delivery and transportation. Innovation and convenience. We have to have these things with our owners. We have to have these things with our tenants. You have to be looking at these variables. Building envelope. Sense of place and a sense of community. If you look at psychology today, people are as lonely as they've ever been in the history of America, and yet they're more connected than they've ever been because of social media. People are dying for community. So let's do the same thing. Let's take away the context. Let's mix everything up. Can you come up with a solution to these variables that are out there? This is basically what we came up with. People need a place. They definitely need a place. They need an experience. And they need us. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.